All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about the Tides and Waves project. Um, so, for those of you moving on to this, we spent a good deal of time talking about nuclear power the last couple of weeks. And as we kind of move towards a little bit more of the renewables, um, obviously you should have a good understanding of how hydroelectric power is working, but more importantly, some of the objectives for this lesson would be to describe how electricity can be generated from tides and ocean waves. Obviously, being able to understand the limitations of using tides and waves to generate our electricity, and then, of course, being able to describe the advantages of using waves and tides to generate electricity. So, with that, let's take a few minutes. Let's just hit on a couple of key points before we talk about the project. Okay. Um, so, when you consider how the introduction is framed, okay, the introduction of your lesson frames um, the the tidal phenomenon around obviously gravity and around the moon's gravity. Okay, so with that, um, what does it all mean? Okay, if you know when high and low tides are flowing in and out of the bay, you could talk about how to harness tidal energy and then use that energy to our advantage as if we're talking about or when we're talking about um, a renewable energy source. So let's move in a little bit more about you know how wave power works. One of the high points of this lesson talked about some emerging technologies that are being developed to harness wave energy. Okay, um, so there's really three major ones. Okay, there's Limpet, there's Palamas, and then there's Anaconda. Okay, so these three technologies, Limpet obviously, it's there's a device in your lesson that goes over the animation that shows you how the technology works, whereby waves enter and leave. It causes a compression or a decompression of air pressure on a turbine, and then obviously the turbine blades keep moving, which then which works to turn a generator. With Palamas, it's really a long hinge tube that essentially bobs up and down in the waves. And as those hinges bend, they pump hydraulic fluid into a generator, which then drives a generator. Okay, and much like Palamas, Anaconda is a similar technology. And again, in the lesson, there's three short videos that go over these technologies. So I would encourage you to look at those three different devices. Now, um, pros and cons. Obviously, the pros and cons of wave power. Advantages: it's renewable. Obviously, we don't have to buy fuel for it. It has no waste byproducts, and it doesn't produce air pollution and has no waste byproducts. Okay. Now, the 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 disadvantages are obviously are that it's limited to area where there's a consistency with waves. Okay, its devices are prone to corrosion because of ocean water. Storm damage is an issue, and obviously very little infrastructure that exists to harness that energy. So, um, those are things that we have to think about if we're going to, as a country, we're going to move forward um, with with wave power. Okay, tidal power. All right. Your lesson really talked a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages of tidal power. Okay, again, advantages: noise pollution isn't an issue. Once you've built the technology, it's there, it's free. There's no fuel, it's totally renewable. The tides are predictable and they're reliable. And then, of course, offshore turbines that are involved in this have low impact. Okay. The disadvantages, though, are there's expenses. Okay, there's a high environmental impact like hydroelectric dams are. You got to think about it from the perspective of tidal power only provides about 10 hours of power each day when the tide is moving in and out. Okay, so we're limited to the coastal areas, and obviously another issue is our the ability to withstand storms. So as you're thinking about this, okay, think about some questions as you move forward. Which countries have the would gain the most benefit from using tidal power? And the amount of carbon dioxide that we could reduce as a result of using these two types of power from emissions, they could be beneficial, but how much? Okay, so in the long run, how much could we save? So with that, let's go over and talk a few minutes about the project, okay? So in the project, it asks you basically four questions. So again, you're generating more of a dialogue, okay, in four questions. The four questions are: what type of technologies are being used to take advantage of tidal power in New York, and why do scientists say that this technology will not harm fish in the area? Okay, so for this question, really, you should be succinct in your answer. We're looking for, one, two, three sentences at most. Okay, and you need to focus your answer around, um, you know, the current wave technology being used. All right. Again, that information you could find in the lesson. The second question asks to describe two ways that the design of the Pelamis wave power technology may help minimize the effect to marine animals and migrating seabirds. Okay, so in order to do this, you need to watch the Pelamis video um, in the lesson on wave power. You need to make sure you watch it. You need to make sure you take some notes, and really, in in a well constructed 4 to 5 sentence paragraph, give me the answer to the question. Okay. The third question is: explain why tidal barrages can have a negative impact or negative environmental impact. Okay. Again, I'm looking for a real succinct, concise, clear answer here. 2 to 3 sentences, um, in the way in which the negative environmental impacts are surrounded around this issue. Okay, um, 2 or 3 sentences, and it can even be bulleted. It can even be bulleted for this question. Okay, and then finally, suppose you live in an area where wave or tidal power can be generated. Okay, the government is proposing an increase in taxes to help you build a wave or a tidal plant. The power plant will reduce your area's dependency on imported fossil fuels and will help reduce air pollution, but will be very costly to start and may mean an increase in your area's tax base. Okay, so in this, I'm looking for at least a paragraph, okay, for you to describe your opinion on whether citizens should be asked to support these types of power plants through their taxes. Now remember, this is an open ended question, this is an opinion question. However, you need to be persuasive one way or the other when you give the answer. Just stating the answer is not going to be good enough. I'm going to be looking for your answer as well as your argument for this answer. And you can use sources from in the lesson, or you can use sources from outside on the internet as long as you properly cite them. Okay? I'll be looking for your reasoning. I'll be looking for correct spelling and grammatics. And your use of resources and citations in order to give credit for this answer. Okay, so this is really the big one of the four. You can write all those answers either in a Word document, or you can certainly paste it in the essay section on the project site. If you get stuck or you have questions as you move along, certainly I encourage you to visit the VO. And if you have any other problems throughout this, reach out through email or give me a call. I'll be more than happy to help you. And next week, we'll be back here talking a little bit more about some other renewable resources.